Welcome to the fifth episode of the Good for America podcast. I'm your host, former Congressman Bob Good from Virginia's 5th District. As always, you can count on me to speak the truth, irrespective of party or personality. I will let you know when our elected officials are letting us down or betraying our trust. As a reminder, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow me on social media at Rep Bob Good, rate the show, and share it with your friends. Today, we're going to be talking about Israel and Iran, the conflict there. We're going to be talking about President Trump's new position, seemingly last week, on illegals in the country and Chinese students. And we're going to talk about good for America versus good for Trump. Let's get started first with the update on the Israel-Iran conflict. Iran was warned to make a deal repeatedly by President Trump and to give up their nuclear ambitions. But Iran refused to make a deal despite President Trump's warnings. They were given 60 days to do so, and this attack happened on day 61. Our stated foreign policy, again, is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And Israel, our number one ally in the world, is executing that policy on our behalf, whether they're doing it intentionally for us or unintentionally. That is the impact of their execution of this war, is to implement our foreign policy for us. Israel has greatly diminished America's enemies in the Middle East. But what is the existing threat of the terror cells and the enemies that are still within our border? Only time will tell, and we'll talk about more on that in the next topic. But this Israeli attack was carefully planned, and it was years in the making. The time was right for Israel, with the already weakened Iran from the previous Israeli attacks over the past couple of years. You have an unstable and demilitarized Syria that wasn't able to engage or get involved or to respond. And you've got the impact of the Gaza war on the Iranian proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. So Israel is unquestionably dominating Iran in this conflict. Israel has command of the Iranian skies, or air superiority. Israeli planes, missiles, drones, they're flying freely over the country of Iran. They're striking targets almost without resistance. Israel's even launching some of these drone strikes from within Iran itself. Israel has special force commandos units who are operating freely within Iran itself. And the Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, is on the ground and has infiltrated Iran itself. Mossad is helping identify strategic sites and human targets from within Iran. And Israel has eliminated dozens of the Iranian military leaders, their terrorist coordinators, their nuclear scientists. Matter of fact, Israel is eliminating the replacements of the military leaders almost immediately after they've been named. They're getting them within days. So these got to be hard jobs to fill within Iran. And you've got warnings going out for these individuals that are being named to replace those who are eliminated, that they are in danger themselves. Israel has demonstrated the ability to destroy what were once thought to be safe targets or assets hundreds of feet underground. It's incredible that Israel has demonstrated the ability to execute this major fight with Iran while they're still fighting the greatly weakened Hamas and Hezbollah back at home in Gaza. But as a result of this conflict, which is far from over, Israel's world profile, its military profile, has been greatly enhanced and elevated in this conflict, while Iran's has been greatly diminished. And matter of fact, Hezbollah recently announced that they're not going to enter this conflict, seemingly because they don't want to be on the losing side with Iran. Israel has been targeting Iran's nuclear threat and is at war with the Iranian terrorist regime. On the other hand, like Hamas, Iran is targeting Israeli civilians and is at war with the Jewish people. We should support and be willing to defend Israel, again, as our number one ally, I believe, but we should not directly engage in this conflict or escalate it unnecessarily. Israel can and will do this on their own. They can and will win this conflict on their own. They're showing that. Regime change on behalf of the United States should be out of the question. That is a concern or a job for the Iranian people. It's up to them to decide. It's their choice. Do they want to continue to be ruled by a religious tyranny that they've suffered under now for some 45 or so years? Our U.S. interest is our safety and security. and eliminating or reducing threats to those interests. It's not to engage in futile attempts to set up, prop up, or create new governments. What we have here in the United States is not transferable to the Middle East, in terms of most of the Middle East anyway. What we have here is built on the foundations of our Judeo-Christian values, our respect for the rule of law, our belief in God-given unalienable rights and adherence to the Constitution. No such foundation exists like that in most of the world, let alone in countries like Iran. We'll talk about a little bit more about that on the next topic. But as Israel projects its America-supported, America-supplied, and America-equipped power and dominance in Iran and the Middle East, let's permit our enemies, our shared enemies with Israel, as a matter of fact, to fear the possibility or the threat of U.S. power. But let's continue to focus on diplomacy and maximum pressure, as President Trump did in his first term. Iran is going to come crawling back to the negotiating table, I hope and believe. And let's continue to focus on rebuilding our most potent, lethal fighting machine on the planet so that hopefully, God willing, we never have to use it. I want to move to talk about some developments from last week with President Trump as it relates to illegal aliens on the job here in the country and foreign students in our colleges. This past week saw two troubling developments from the president. He announced that he doesn't want ICE to enforce our immigration laws for illegal farm workers, illegal restaurant workers, or illegal hotel workers. It's as if we just realized that there are some businesses and some employers who want to hire illegal aliens for cheap foreign labor. Secondly, he expressed support for 500,000 more, 500,000 more CCP loyal Chinese students to attend college here in America. He apparently wants ICE to stop raids at farms or agriculture sites and at restaurants and at hotels. Trump told ICE on Sunday to focus on the cities, as a matter of fact, the blue cities and the blue states, and not the rural heartland. And if you think about the impact of that, that's like saying, hey, we want the illegals to flood to the red areas, to flood to the Republican states. We're only deporting right now a few hundred illegal aliens a day, or roughly about 20,000 a month. So do the math on that. We're only deporting a few hundred a day, about 20,000 a month, and we're on track, therefore, for only a couple of hundred deportations this year. And that's after Biden brought in some 15 million illegal aliens during his 4 years. We can't be just deporting a couple of hundred a year. That's not what President Trump ran on. We've got to step up deportations and enforce our immigration laws for all illegals who are here, including those who are working on farms and in restaurants and in hotels. We are a nation of laws. We are a nation of legal, lawful immigration. You cannot immigrate here illegally, and you shouldn't be able to stay in the United States if your first act on our soil was to break our laws and to be here illegally. With respect to Chinese students here in the U.S., no Chinese student comes to the U.S. apart from approval from, coordination with, and loyalty to the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Why would we want more Chinese students studying STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math here in the United States at the undergraduate level, let alone at the graduate level? Why do we want more CCP influence on our college campuses? Why do we want the CCP further enriching our woke, liberal, anti-American institutions? Trump is the first president to effectively identify and confront the Chinese threat. He did that in his first term, and of course, Biden backed away from that. Trump appropriately recognized China as an adversary, where Biden called him a competitive partner. But President Trump, again, the first president to identify and confront the Chinese threat, to see it for what it is. But this is inconsistent with that endeavor. This is inconsistent to say, hey, we want 500,000 more Chinese students studying on college campuses here in the U.S. It's very troubling that much of what I call the Trump first media, the so-called conservative media, that's not even reporting on these problematic contradictions from last week, where, again, President Trump said, hey, we want to stop deporting those who are, or even arresting or confronting those who are illegals on farms or in restaurants or hotels. And secondly, again, that we want more Chinese students here studying, CCP approved, Communist Chinese Party approved students studying in the US. It's very troubling that much of the Trump first so-called conservative media is not even reporting on these contradictions. Others report on it, but they blame his staff, his advisors, or his cabinet, when obviously President Trump is 100% responsible for all policy coming out of his administration. We need to recognize that it's not good, it's not in our interests, to have more non-Americans living in America. Again, we are a nation that has been very generous and very welcoming to new immigration, new immigrants who've come here legally and lawfully through the naturalization process. They pledge their allegiance. They've demonstrated they can contribute. They can make us stronger. They've renounced their allegiance to whatever country they came from. That's different. But it's not good to have more non-American, non-citizens living here. See the previous topic. We were talking about the terrorist cells that are in the U.S. as a result of the 15 million or so illegals that Biden helped come into our country. They've come from all over the world. They've come from adversarial countries. It matters here. It matters what your beliefs are, what your values are, what your culture is, what your language is. You know, the left has said for years, for decades, hey, our diversity is our strength. No, it's our unity is our strength. Our unity of values, our unity of beliefs, our unity of culture, our unity of the English language. And it weakens and threatens America to continue adding those, illegally especially, who don't know or value our history, who don't know or value our Constitution, the foundation of our law system. Adding those who don't respect our border, who don't speak our language or share our culture. It's a problem to add people from around the world who don't appreciate a constitutional republic, who don't appreciate the rule of law, the concept and the responsibility of self-rule, the sacred value of life. It's a problem to add more people into our country who don't appreciate or respect our God-given unalienable rights, or in fact, our Bill of Rights. This podcast is called Good for America for a reason. It's not called Good for Trump or Good for anyone else. It's called Good for America. Most of the time, Good for America and President Trump, of course, are aligned. What's good for America is what President Trump normally stands for. Americans, including me, voted for Donald Trump over Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Americans overwhelmingly chose to end the Biden-Harris regime. In fact, I personally voted for Trump, of course, 3 times because he was an infinitely better choice than Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris. And those were very easy decisions. I didn't, and I don't think most Americans did, I didn't vote for President Trump so that he could do whatever he wants. I didn't vote to redefine what is right as whatever Trump says or does. I didn't vote to redefine conservative as whatever Trump says or does. I didn't vote to redefine constitutional as whatever Trump says or does. And I didn't vote to redefine America first as whatever Trump says or does. Trump first is not the same thing as America first. America first didn't begin with President Trump. Just see Pat Buchanan some 30 years ago with his campaigns. I mean, just look back at the last couple of decades. Did we vote for H.W. Bush or Bob Dole or George W. Bush or John McCain or Mitt Romney so they could enact their agenda and define or redefine issues and policies as they saw fit with no resistance from Republicans in Congress? And while millions of Republican Trump voters will disagree with me on these points, I think there's millions who will not. But more troubling is when Republican members of Congress seemingly now define conservatism or constitutionalism or America first or what's right as whatever President Trump says or does. That's not healthy in our constitutional republic. Or at least they pretend that, again, whatever President Trump does is conservative, what President Trump does is constitutional, whatever President Trump does is America first or what's right. They pretend that out of their own selfish political interests or welfare. Is anything more disqualifying than an elected official doing what's best for themselves instead of what's best for America? But that, sadly, is endemic in Washington, as the priority of almost all of our elected officials in Washington is to be in Washington, to be elected, to get reelected. And so, of course, they will do things and they will operate in a fashion that protects their number one interest, which is to be in Washington, to be in Congress, to be elected, to be reelected. But Americans voted against massive inflationary spending and higher interest rates. That's why I've been so critical of the big ugly bill, because it doesn't address the massive inflationary spending that have caused the higher interest rates and a lesser purchasing power for Americans and a fiscal crisis on the horizon. Americans also voted against open borders and against keeping illegal aliens in our country, and they voted for mass deportation of illegals. So we've got to hold our elected Republican officials to deliver on those priorities. That is our responsibility in keeping the republic. Well, thanks again for joining me in this fifth episode, I should say, of the Good for America podcast. I'm your host, Bob Good. Please be sure and subscribe to the podcast. Follow me on social media at Rep Bob Good. Rate the show and share it with your friends. Let's keep the republic.